On. I'll greet you again. We are here to transform ourselves and each other and the world. Good morning. Good morning. I don't know what to do about that. There we go. A little closer. Folks who are online, you think this is bad. You should have seen the technical problems I had the first service. All right, I think that's good. Folks who are online, you are welcome to keep your video on throughout the service. We'll mostly keep audio off, but you'll want to know where that unmute button is for the end of the service. Online attendees, also, you can see the order of service by following the link in the chat. If you are here on the UUCPA campus, you can always scan the QR code at the welcome table for an electronic order of service, or an usher will give you the paper version. Speaking of going by that table, if you have not, please do before you leave, and please be in the habit of swinging by there as you come in. Keeping a record of who is here is really important in the era of COVID. This is how we let people know when there's been an exposure and try to cut down on community spread, and we want to be able to tell you if somebody here tests positive tomorrow morning. Couple things I want you to know. Next week there is a double reason to come to Second Sunday lunch. In addition to lunch, Ed and the other members of the Mission Task Force will each be at a table to hear your thoughts on the question of why UUCPA exists in the world. That is Sunday, October 9th, beginning at 12:15. Also coming up this week, a town hall, also wanting to know your opinion on whether we should go to one service the way we do in the summer, do that year round, or continue to have two, how we might mitigate the pros, the cons of whatever choice we make. Would just like to hear how that would affect you and your creative thinking about it. That is the evening of this Wednesday evening, and there's another opportunity to do that in person. That one's on Zoom. So again, follow all the links there. If you've got the paper version, follow up online and learn lots more. And today, please come to the volunteer fair after the service. It's here and in the grassy area there. 25 groups and activities from UUCPA, all ranged around to answer your questions about what's involved in making them happen and whether you can find the place that you want to connect with people via service. And now, let us begin our service.
If you have a chalice with you at home, please light it with us. We light this chalice, remembering and honoring our own tradition and celebrating the rich diversity of traditions among us. As we search for justice, meaning, and purpose, may we remember that justice, meaning, and purpose live first in deeply listening to one another. With our centering words each week, we draw on the many sources of our living tradition. Today's words are from the biblical book of Proverbs. The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out. As we follow the sound of the bell into silence, we allow ourselves to arrive here fully.
Our first hymn, number 360, originally has the words women, children, men to describe our community. And that might, if you have the printed order of service or the hymnal, that's what you've got, because I hadn't paid close attention to the lyrics when I was putting up together the printed order of service. Yeah, I guess it's just in the hymnal. But when Unitarian Universalists wanted the words to reflect a more nuanced understanding of gender than the binary, see next week's service, the composer Jason Shelton suggested a change to the second verse. And so we will sing it, "We of all ages, living out our span, infants and sages, sharing what we can," which also, as it turns out, rhymes better than the original words. So win-win. We of all ages living out our span. Will you please rise in body or spirit and sing, "Here We Have Gathered." We now turn our thoughts to the important events of our lives, which we wish this community to share. You can always leave a card up here anytime between when you come in and this part of the service to have a joy or sorrow spoken. Obviously, if you're on Zoom, you can put it there in the chat. And wherever you are, including right here, right now, if you send it to joyconcern@uucpa.org, the worship leader will get it on their little handy device. Very active here. So I know is also running for office in San Mateo. It's just great to see people being involved. Any other joys or sorrows in the chat that I missed? Then let us take a quiet time. As always, it's been an eventful week in the world. Seems like there's no other kind. So our hearts are also with the people of Ukraine, of Florida, and other parts of our country and the world that are struggling this week. And as we enter into this silence, a time of prayer or meditation, we hold all that we have heard with compassion and care. Blessed be. One sorrow that is frequently in our hearts comes from our own flaws and failings, the moments that we've fallen short of who we want to be. So let us turn our hearts now to silent contemplation of such moments. Maybe in the last week. What's that? Still, is there another here? Oh, thank you. Before I turn to our confession, I will just add to our sorrows. Kathy Parmentier was sick this week for the first time since the shutdown. Yeah, keeping away from people does keep us healthy, but not COVID, just old-fashioned flu with aches, fever, and fatigue. It was over in just a few days. I hope that's the last of it for you, Kathy. And thank you, Kevin, for pointing that out to me. So let us turn our hearts now to silent contemplation of moments of disappointment in ourselves, an honest and compassionate self-examination that makes it possible for us to recommit ourselves to our greater hopes in silence. In seeking to live into that greater vision, we do not strive alone. We have the wisdom of our tradition, and we have the company of one another. As many Unitarian Universalists have affirmed over many years with the words of this unison reading. Will you join me? It's there in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church, is its sacrament, and service is its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve life and human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other.
Will you please rise, embody your spirit, and sing Ubi Caritas, number 1048 in your teal hymnal. The words are online and in the online order of service. We'll sing through it 3 times. There are moments when I feel a sense of awe and wonder, when my busy, thought-filled mind quiets down enough for me to notice the world and be amazed. Some such moments are easy to find. I step out the door early in the morning and notice the scent and feel of the air, the sound of a bird, the light in the sky. Or on my meditation cushion, from time to time, there's a quieting, an opening that brings deep peace and a feeling of connection. Looking at art, listening to music, I could multiply the examples. In other settings, finding that sense of awe and wonder is more of a challenge. Ironically, it can be most elusive when I'm in the direct presence of the most amazing, astonishing, miraculous phenomena I can imagine, in the direct presence of other people. Even then, of course, it can happen. A kind of mindful appreciation can arise out of a deep, authentic conversation, however brief. Talking with a friend or with a stranger, there can be joy, gratitude, a special satisfaction that only can come from connecting with another person. One time that when this can happen, for me, is during our greeting and talking together before and after our Sunday services, here in the main hall, out on the patio, even in Zoom chat rooms. I can introduce myself to a stranger and extend a welcome. I can follow up on someone's joy or concern. I can thank people for the contributions I see them make to our community. A member of the choir, a guest musician, someone serving up one of our wonderful second Sunday lunches. When it feels right, I can also push myself to open up about my own joys and concerns. Here, where it's safe to receive nurturance, care, and appreciation, as well as offering these gifts to others, I can let myself be the one who is transformed. There are all sorts of opportunities at UUCPA to get involved in small groups, committees, service projects, committees, discussion groups, committees, singing groups, and more. Our greeting times before and after the Sunday service help to knit these many separate, smaller collectives into one larger whole. Over time, these Sunday connections have a cumulative effect. They add depth to other parts of the service, as when we sing a hymn or recite our benediction together. They make it easier for me to step out of my comfort zone and try new church activities. Through our greeting, listening, and sharing, we become a whole that is greater than its parts. Thank you. Our reading today is from the Connected Discourses in the Theravada Buddhist canon. It's a brief conversation between the Buddha's attendant, the Venerable Ananda, and the Buddha, in which Venerable Ananda said to the Buddha, "This is half of the spiritual life, Lord. Admirable friendship, admirable companionship, admirable camaraderie." The Buddha replied, "Don't say that, Ananda, don't say that. Admirable friendship, admirable companionship, admirable camaraderie is actually the whole of the spiritual life." Thank you.
actually turn the thing on. It's a busy morning. But I wanted to be up here because I want to concentrate on what I have to say, and I don't need to be behind something. So this was a series of a lot of services last year, and then it's been a bit of a hiatus for several months, and I wanted to pick it back up, a series going through the parts of the service in no particular order and talking about why we do the things we do in the Sunday service. And today is a little bit of a trick question because, strictly speaking, the things that we're talking about are not part of the service, but they happen on Sunday morning. So the welcome and announcements at the beginning, the greeting time, which at the current moment is at the end, and the fact that they are just outside of the service is an important part of this answer. Why are they where they are, and why do we have them at all when we have them? Now, if you talk to Unitarian Universalist ministers, if you're on a chat of colleagues of mine, every 6 months or so there will be a big debate about announcements. So I was spared a lot of that debate here by the fact that clearly there had been one, because when I arrived in 2003, there was a new policy in place, and I was deeply grateful to the interim, Kurt Kuwald. It's often the job of interims to say, you know what, can we fix this thing before the new minister comes in? And clearly one of the things that some people thought needed fixing were announcements. I can imagine what that might have been like because I've been in other congregations that had not taken a step like ours. What we have now is the person who's leading the service speaks the announcements. Once in a while we'll have something special like the justice partner. Otherwise, no, you hand your written announcement to the person who's leading it, and there's at most 3. That person can fudge that a little bit. They are at 1 sentence each. Again, that person can fudge at their discretion, but I'm pretty sure I know what was happening beforehand that gave rise to this policy. Because people can get up and make an announcement. Nobody ever knows how long they're speaking, including me, and it was just going on so long that people were feeling like this is not what I've come here for. And I'm grateful that the people who set the new policy in place, who I believe was the Sunday Services Committee, and I'm looking to resurrect that, so come on to the volunteer fair and talk to me if you're interested in doing something like that. Mostly they'll be bringing guest speakers here. I'm really glad that they did not decide to do away with announcements altogether. Now, many of my colleagues would argue that they should. You could certainly point out there's many other ways for us to get information about what's going on at church outside of services. Right now, we've got the video right here, and it shows before the services. That's great. We have a website. We have a newsletter. There's many ways for people to get this information. They don't have to get it on Sunday morning, right? But I really like that we do. That we keep it short and limited and urgent. There's a certain hierarchy of which things we've decided are the most important of all the many, many things that go on, that they have to be announced on Sunday morning. But to me, it does a piece of what the service is all about, which is, as our title says, creating community. What happens at church that is sacred is not just in this hour. It's also all these groups that are here. It's what they do too. It's the singing in the choir, not just the fact that you all sing on Sunday, but the singing that you do together on Thursday. That is a spiritual practice. It is the meeting of the finance committee, not just because we just need money and somebody managing the money in order to run an organization, but because, as Kevin Crane put it beautifully when we were talking about it this week, well, you know what? I'm not going to tell you what he said. Go to his table and you'll hear it, because he's eloquent on the subject. So much more than just crunching numbers. And, if you're serving doing copyright compliance, it's not only a nice thing to do if you're the kind of person who likes to just work alone here and there when you can on your computer at home and know you're contributing to your community, but it's enabling us to use fabulous music, know that we're doing right by the artists who create it and enable the creation of beautiful music out in our community. And that too is creating community, not just here, not just this circle of people, but the much wider community. I'll come back to that. But then this matter of greeting time. For this, I was here for some recent history, and I want to fill you in a little bit about it. I don't know all the many incarnations that greeting time has taken in the history of this congregation, but I can tell you a little bit about what it was like when I got here. So we had a time at the beginning of the service. We'd have the announcements. We'd have a hello, everybody. And then we would invite people who were visiting or new to introduce themselves. And we had a handheld mic that we handed around. So I noticed in the first many years I was here that the preponderance of people who shared then were visiting from other UU congregations, which is great. It's a nice sort of ambassadorship we do, and it was great to meet with somebody. Oh, you're in the church in Castine, Maine. What's going on in Unitarian Universalism in Castine? And that kind of conversation. But I definitely noticed that the newcomers, local people who were trying to find their way into this community and who were going to come back week after week, tended not to introduce themselves. But it took me a long time for this to click, until I finally realized what it reminded me of. It's like, this is how I was taught to introduce people, just by watching my parents. I don't think they ever spelled it out. So I'm walking down the street with Ed, and we're chatting away. And I see another friend of mine, Anna, coming towards us. And because I know Ed, and I know Anna, it's on me to introduce them. I don't expect them to introduce themselves. They're both a little awkward, like, oh, I'm walking along with Amy, and now she meets this old friend, and I say, hi, Anna, I haven't seen you in ages. So I say, Anna, this is Ed. Ed, this is Anna, and that breaks the ice, and then they can talk. I said, that's what we should do. So we expanded our greeting time. We made it, let's really spend some time greeting each other. Let's make enough time to actually go and talk to some newcomers and ask them. Often the answer is no. People don't want a spotlight on them. But ask them, would you like me to then introduce you to everybody? So we did that for a while. Then COVID kind of messed with that, as it messed with a lot of things. And as we were thinking about how to bring this back, I had a conversation with I can't remember which committee right now, in which they said, hey, how about we have greeting time, but we do it at the end of the service? And I had to think about that for a minute, because my first thought was, well, it's very important to me about how the service ends, is that we can bring the feeling, bring whatever we experienced in the service out into the rest of our lives. That is why I don't like doing announcements at the end. And I'll go toe-to-toe with any colleague who says, oh, we do announcements at the end because, now the service is over. No. Announcements are great. I love, they're about the community. We need people to know what's going on all through the week, but I don't want that tone to suddenly be there at the end of the service. I love the way we end with music, a blessing by the choir, a blessing by each other. But I thought, oh, greeting time, that carries that forward very nicely. Now we will take whatever we experienced and we'll bring it to somebody right next to us. And it'll encourage us to have a little bit of that deeper conversation. What Ed was saying, that maybe we can be a little vulnerable, because we've just come from the service. And it's not just like, hey, nice weather today, or, how about those Warriors? But, oh, that piece of the choirs, it just brought me to tears. Maybe we could share that. Or we could say to a newcomer, so what'd you think? Was anything interesting to you in the service? Tell me about it. Say to a friend, did we sing any of your favorite hymns today? Tell me about it. To invite some of that deeper conversation. Because, the thing about creating community, the thing about having this as adjuncts to the service, set apart a little bit, but adjunct to it, is we're saying that what happens to us in this very private way, even though we're right next to people and singing together and speaking together and all that, in a way we're each in this bubble of our own private thoughts and feelings during the service. And then to say, yes, but that's not all that it is to be a person with a spirit, a person who has ethical questions and spiritual quandaries and a whole life of the mind and the heart. No, it's part of being in a community. So this end of the service, this greeting time, can be a bridge to that. Just as it was when we had it at the beginning, a bridge from our everyday worlds into this time. I try to separate it out a little bit by, as you notice, saying, after we've done the announcements at the beginning, I always say, and now let us begin our service. And then we have the prelude. That's my way of saying, what we have been doing isn't quite our worship yet. Now we go into this time of celebration, of praise, of contemplation, of moral wrestling, of all the things that we do with our services here as Unitarian Universalists. But we do have it adjunct, not just some other place, some other time. And there's other things that go on that are really important for community creation here in these parts of the service. Again, so to give a little history of the greeting time, as I said, it was at the beginning. And when I started doing that, when I said, hey, let's try to have like a real kind of bustle of greeting time, there will be a fair amount of noise, and then I'll go around and bring the mic to anybody who wants to introduce somebody, etc. Susan Plass, whom some of you know, she and her husband retired a couple of years ago and moved to Massachusetts where one of their daughters lives. So if you've come recently, you might not know Susan. Susan was never shy about talking to me about what she loved and didn't love about something I'd done in the service. It was great to talk about it with her because she really thought about ritual and how do you create the kind of space that we're trying to create. So she came to me and said, you know, I like people, greeting each other, of course, but when I come into the service, when I come in the morning, I want to just sit in silence. I want to just kind of meditate and have a quiet time and take that into the service, maybe some quiet music. And I knew just what she meant, because I've been a church junkie since long before I was ever thought of being a minister. When I was a young Jewish kid and then an atheist, if I went to New York City, I'd head straight for St. Patrick's and just sit in the quiet of the space. I just love those sort of spaces and what they hold and the beauty there. And so I understood what she meant and what we were giving up. And I've been to UU churches that start that way. You come into the service and the usher says to you, or it says on the order of service, please observe a quiet space here. This is our meditative time before the service begins. And maybe somebody will be softly playing music or a soft recording playing, but it's very quiet. I thought, that is nice. But here's what I had been thinking, and I said this to Susan. We're a very Silicon Valley congregation. People are a little shy and introverted, visitors and people who've been here every time. We don't always know how to start a conversation. We kind of need a little practice in that. And I said, I think for people to find their way into this congregation, we're going to have structured ways and a little practice, frankly, at how do you make small talk and invite it to be more than small talk when you meet somebody new. I said, maybe when we get better at that and we feel like, okay, that's now a comfortable part of our congregational life, then we'll return to having a meditation and really make that formal. Say, this is our meditative part of the service. Yeah, the sound folks might be going around fixing some things. The worship associate and minister and musician might be having to touch base, but everybody will keep that very quiet so that you can come in the time before the service and enjoy what can be a sacred silence. And now I'm thinking, maybe we're there. Maybe we've done this and we're moving our greeting time to the end. Maybe the beginning can be that time for us to begin to do that. Think about that. We'll see how the greeting time at the end goes. We've only done it for a few weeks. Something we're doing obviously today is this volunteer fair, which is a vivid illustration of how we create community beyond the service. And we're also having these conversations next week, and the Mission Task Force has already invited it online and is hosting other conversations. We're talking about what UUCPA is for. And I'm thinking, there's a lot of partial answers to that. that really, in their partialness, point me to what I think is so important and why the way we create community is so important. The why of why we create community is in there. Let me explain what I mean. So there's lots of things we do together as a congregation, right? We have intellectual opportunities. We have learning together. And that's really important. But we're not like a community, we're not like an organization for whom that's the mission, for whom that's the purpose. A school, that's their purpose, right? They say we're going to teach a certain group of people a certain amount of stuff in a certain way. That's our mission. If we do it, we have fulfilled our mission. I don't think that's true of UUCPA. We have an excellent children's religious education, youth, and adult religious education program, but no matter how good they are, if that was all that was thriving here, we wouldn't be carrying out our mission. And the justice work we do, so important. But we're not a social justice organization or an environmental justice organization. You know, the success of an environmental justice organization, such as many of us support and belong to, is, okay, we're trying to reverse climate change. And to the extent that we're having an impact on climate change, we are fulfilling our mission. And that's something we all try to do here at UUCPA, but that's not our whole mission either. Like if we were only doing that, that would be fabulous, but we would have missed something. I could go on with all our kind of parts of our lives here at UUCPA, but I'm thinking particularly of the service. Because the service is very much a part of personal transformation, right? To transform ourselves. As I said, there's a sort of intimacy, a privacy to the space we're in, even though we're together and doing it communally, and that's so important. But we wouldn't be fulfilling our mission if we were just changing in here. Because one of the things that we come here to realize is that individuals, well, they're not individuals, we're all interconnected. To quote another Buddhist teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, he says, it's not that we are, we inter-are. This is something Buddhist philosophers have been saying in much more complex language for a long time. Back to Nagarjuna, back to Dogen Zenji. And along comes this humble Vietnamese monk and says it in very simple 20th century language for all of us who did not study those people. We inter-are. Everything is interconnected. And so, for example, our being, we don't fully understand our being until we understand the way we are interacting with the outside world. Thank you for the illustration. It was just vivid and perfectly timed. Thank you. We are part of a wider world. We're connected to each other. And so when we talk about community, we're not just talking about creating this community. That's our practice for becoming aware of how we're interconnected with the much wider community of all beings, of this whole earth and everything that lives on it. And whatever we do in this hour is not complete until we've made that connection. And so this greeting time that happens afterwards helps us to make that connection. It's the bridge to each other so that we realize, I inter-am with all of you. And it's carrying me into all the things the church does through the week and the things that I do through the week. It's carrying me to my family life and my school and my work and my interactions in my neighborhood and in the wider world. And it's why I think the mission question for a congregation is so special and interesting. Because as I said, I belong to an environmental justice organization, but I don't feel when it's fulfilling its mission, I'm glad and I want to support it, and it's fulfilling a piece of what I want to do in my life. But it's not fulfilling my mission, my purpose as a human being. And I feel like when we ask, what is the mission of our congregation? If we're doing it right, if we have a really strong sense of what that mission is, that answer is very similar to the answer of what is the purpose of your life, each one of us. Not that we all have exactly the same purpose, but that knowing what that purpose is and living it out, well, that's why we come to a UU congregation, to do that, to be the people we want to be. So I actually haven't voted in the survey. It's not a vote, it's a survey. I hope you fill it out. It's short and fascinating. So of course I looked at the questions, but I'm not going to fill out the Mission Task Force's survey unless they specifically ask me to, because here I am. I have a lot of say in what I think the mission of the congregation is, and really my job as the minister is to aid them in aiding you to discover what the mission is, and then I help you carry it out. But when I think about why I come to a UU congregation, it is that. It's my mission as a person, my purpose as a person, and the purpose of the congregation come together. This congregation's work in the world, like mine, is for each of us to live fully in this little time on this beautiful planet that we have, and to live in a way that acknowledges, that feels as much as possible, because it's so hard to feel sometimes, that we do all interconnect and overlap, that my being is not just the being of this one instance of Homo sapiens, that we are. I want to know that. I want this community to help me to know that. So it's not just the how we create community that's at question here, it's the why. And we create community so that we can feel, oh, that's what it's like. That moment of connection made me choke up when Ed spoke of it with somebody after the service. I'm practicing trying to feel that with the birds out there and the trees and that neighbor who's really giving me trouble, and the whole world. To help us to know our why, which is the community of all beings. Thank you for being a part of that. And now, if you feel grateful for this community, this small part, this practice community for the larger community, if you are moved by gratitude for the life that we share, then you may choose to support with whatever financial resources you can this community that we are creating and that is creating us. The offering will now be given and received. If you prefer to give cash or a check, Kathy will be up here to receive that. Thank you, Kathy. If you prefer to give electronically, the order of service gives a QR code and link, and also information on how to use text to give via Give Lively. All right, I've lost my... Please join us in singing Building Bridges, number 1023 in the Teal Hymnal. The words are in the online order of service. We'll sing it 3 times so we can get the round going. Will you please rise in body or spirit? Building Bridges.
After the fermata, you can come in and join us, okay? Look,
They don't
look
know
for
where the
that.
fermata is.
They'll hear it. They'll know where it is. Toward the
We'll signal you.
You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. When the road looks rough ahead, when you're miles and miles from your nice warm bed, you just remember what your old pal said. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me.
You got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. When you got troubles, I got 'em too. There's really nothing I wouldn't do for you. Together, we'll see it through. You got a friend in me. Yeah, you got a friend in me.
Now some other folks might be a little bit smarter than I am.
Bigger and stronger too.
Maybe. But none of them
Them
could ever love you the way I do. It's me and you, oh, and as the years go by, our friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me.
Please stay after the benediction for our conversation time. Of course, if you're here, please go and converse with folks all around at the volunteer fair, see who's got the best snacks. Those online will be invited to small group conversations in our breakout rooms, or maybe just if it's a small group, want to just stay there in the main room, discuss the service and what's going on with you. We all begin with greeting time. A chance to meet somebody you haven't met before, connect with a friend you haven't seen in a while, and old timers. It's a good time to greet a newcomer and see if you can find out enough about what brought them here to see who you might introduce them to next. So if you're online, please unmute yourself, turn on your video, touch hands virtually you might do, while we say our benediction together. And here in the main hall or on the patio, reach out to hold hands if you and the person next to you are good with that. Or to show you're connected in spirit, cross your hands over your heart. Go out into the world in peace. Hold